It's like a dumpster fire, literally a dumpster fire that like every third person throws a match into just to see what happens. And I'm like, that's not positive. I'm not going to do that.
So, Megan, I want to switch a little bit and talk about creating content to contribute to your personal brand.
Yeah.
Now, I know that we hear this all the time. Create a personal brand for yourself. Well, how does one get started doing that?
Oh man, that's a great question. I feel like my process of finding a personal brand has been fully trial and error, mostly error, a couple of wins. I feel like I have finally figured out my color palette, which is the least important part of the process. Maybe I used to laugh when I would connect this to weddings, and if you're planning a wedding, your colors are the least important part of it. You should pick a date first. Like the priority is not there, but I think I went with colors and fonts first. I've been working on it for a number of years, and it still feels weird to think of myself as having a personal brand. But now that I've started building an agency, it's really closely tied to my personal brand because I guess I am the one true source for my content and my information. So I'm really just trying to figure out what do I come across as for people. And I not interviewed, I sent a survey to people at different times, students and friends and coworkers and family, people who know me really well. And I just wanted to say, what words come to mind when you think of me? What do you think my personality is? If you were trying to describe me to someone else, what words would you use? And some things really came out of that just totally resonated. If I was one of those singing bowls, this was the ding, the resonant, you're like, oh, this is me. And it was cheerful, relentlessly positive and supportive and kind and encouraging. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally me. A little sarcastic, definitely. I didn't actually double check before we started recording whether or not I should curse. So we're going to tip that towards being polite and clean language so we don't have to put a mature content on here. But it's mostly just finding out how am I perceived and is that what I want to continue to align myself with and put out content that's like that. So it is actually through trial and error helped me find not just my brand personality with the colors and fonts, but also the tone and the voice that I use to build the content, which isn't something I would have paid attention to a few years ago.
Sure. So, tell me a little bit about that journey of trial and error. What worked?
Oh gosh. Let's see. It feels like a million years ago, but my first foray into building a brand was when I wrote for an online newsletter, not a newsletter. It was a zine online. This is the late early 2000s. Oh, we're aging ourselves. That's okay. Back in the day where we had to figure out how to write our own HTML, I really want this link in this blog post to open into a new tab, and you had to actually go Google or ask Jeeves, perhaps, how that worked. Those were the days when I first started writing, and I wrote under a pseudonym because I had some opinions and I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted them associated with my real name. And one of the pieces of feedback that I got from another writer was, you have a great voice. You should be proud of it and you should be excited to share it alongside your name and your face. Oh, that's very scary. But that encouragement was really helpful to start figuring out, what is my voice? What do I want to put out on the internet? Essentially, since that's where everything lives now. And over the years, and I do think it's probably been 15 or 20 years at this point. Yeah, so that was the early 2000s. I have continued to evolve that, and it's been primarily through writing. I've written for different websites. I've written a couple of books, several of which are no longer available on Amazon because I don't the topic matter is something I don't want to talk about ever again in my life. It was weddings. I wrote a book a long time ago about having a wedding for $1,000. And I ended up building an entire website around that, built an entire brand around that. And I got really tired of people who have a budget of $500, but I would really like to arrive in a horse-drawn carriage. And I'm like, you people are insane. I cannot. So that's how that went in the toilet. I sold that company. It was amazing. But it was through this effort of, what is this? I started a brand of helping, because I had done so much work with people who were building or planning a wedding on a budget, that I connected to other people in the wedding industry and wanted to facilitate them having a better experience with these crazy brides. And was like, how do we build a better wedding business? I started that. I never took it anywhere, but because I was tired of weddings. But it was just so interesting to build these different personalities of what is connected to what and what am I sharing and how am I building authority in this niche that I've developed. And finding myself posting online really led me to build a social media brand. It did actually cause me to delete some social media accounts. I deleted Twitter and I deleted Facebook years ago because that's not where I wanted my brand to be. I didn't want to engage at that level. Twitter just makes me, it's like a dumpster fire, literally a dumpster fire that like every third person throws a match into just to see what happens. And I'm like, that's not positive. I'm not going to do that. And I focused on building content on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And I'm still figuring out what that looks like for me.
Yeah. So much to unpack there, Megan. Woo, lots of great stuff.
Check out all my interviews with industry leaders on BlatzChatz.